This past Monday afternoon, I received news that an old friend of mine and a mentor, Ann Hoffman, had suddenly died that morning of a heart attack. This sermon is dedicated to her memory. Ann was a special person, a professor of Hebrew literature who studied psychoanalysis and was known for her translations, her essays on trauma and narrative and embodiment. She was also a talented painter, a mother, a grandmother, a loving wife. She was 77 years old, slim, healthy, swam regularly. The news of her death was utterly shocking to her family, friends, colleagues, and students. On Wednesday, I attended her funeral. Last night, I made a Shiva visit to her family. As I was sitting there looking at her oldest daughter's wedding album and just looking through all these joyful family pictures, a petite stranger came over to me and joined me, and we started looking through the album together. We leafed through images that reflected so much family, joy, and connection. Suddenly, this stranger looked at me and she said, "After a loss like this, how does one go on?" It turns out this woman had studied with Anne at her psychoanalytic institute and was a psychoanalyst. And so I said to her, "Well, you tell me, you're the psychoanalyst. I'm just a rabbi." I waited for an answer, but she looked at me with sad eyes, just went like that. After a loss of unimaginable proportions, how do we go on? It's not only a question about the loss of Anne, but it's a profound human question. After great loss, how do we go on? After October 7th, how do we go on? Some in this very room, I am sure, are feeling, after Tuesday's election, how do we go on? There's all kinds of grief at this moment, global and personal. Lecha, this Parsha, I believe, addresses this question in the most profound of ways. But it starts at the end of last week's Parsha with a genealogy about Abraham's family, which, unlike most genealogies in the Torah, is actually not boring. We find crucial details embedded in this begat sort of list that help us understand family dynamics. For instance, here's one detail. And the genealogy barely skips a beat, as if this detail was like any other detail. It says, Haran, Abraham's brother, dies tragically in the presence of his father. Vayamat Haran al pnei terach aviv. Haran died in the living presence of Terach, his father. And then there's Avram's wife, Sarai, wanting desperately to have a child, but unable to, defined straight away by an ongoing absence. Vatahi Sarai akara ein la vlad. Now Sarai was barren. She had no child. Right after this painful detail, we are told of a journey. But amazingly enough, it's not Abraham's journey. It's not Avram's journey. It's his father's journey. It's Terach's journey. Terach took Avraham, his son, and Lot, son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, wife of Avram, his son, and they set out together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. Now, if you think about it, right, if you're not a careful reader of Torah, we know it's Abraham's journey. What? Terach went and set out to go to Canaan? What happened? Let me tell you what happened. They get stuck. The family gets stuck on the way to Canaan. They settle in a place called Haran. Vayetzu itam mi'ur kasdim lalechat arza Canaan, vayavo ad Haran, vayeshvu sham. They set out together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan, but when they came to Haran, they settled there. They never made it to Canaan. They never made it to the land of the promise. Why? What happened? There are several reasons. I'll list two right now. Haran, first of all, if you look at ancient maps, is halfway to Canaan. And on the way from Ur to Haran, what you see is the Euphrates is running through. And Haran is actually located on a tributary of the river Euphrates. But from Haran to Canaan, there's no source of water. That's the journey that requires faith. That's the journey over barren landscape, which one could say actually reflects Sarai, right? The challenge of Aram and Sarai's life is faith in the face of barrenness. Then there's another reason. Listen, Haran sounds like Haran, right? The name of the son that Terach lost, that died before him, right? Al Panei Terach, before him. Such a startlingly intimate detail. So they get stuck, perhaps in the place of grief. When Rabbi Ingber and I were talking about this genealogy this week, he reminded me that Haran also sounds like Charon, which means rage. Perhaps this family gets stuck in the city of grief, in the city of fear, in the city of rage. That's the place Avram hears the call. But what makes him different from his family? What makes him able to hear the call to move forward? Consider the beginning of our Parsha. Vayomer Adonai el Abraham, Lecha. Adonai said to Abraham, go you forth, or go for yourself, me'artzecha, from your land, u'mimoladcha, from your birthplace, u'mibeit avicha, from your father's house, el haaretz asher areka, to the place that I will show you. The name of God here that's used is the tetragrammaton, hard to pronounce. And in fact, it indicates the name of God that's forbidden to pronounce, right? Yud, He, Vav, He. But that name of God is very different than the other most popular name of God in the Torah, Elohim. Yud, He, Vav, He, or as we say, Adonai, to avoid pronouncing the unpronounceable name of God, which is a mouthful in itself, is the name of the more personal God, the God that evokes compassion. Elohim is the name of God used for the first majestic creation in Genesis 1. But Adonai is used to create Adam and Chava, and it's the God that calls human beings into relationship, into accountability. Adonai, the Kabbalists tell us, reflects the aspect of God that represents compassion. So in this city and this place of fear and grief and rage, Avram hears a kind voice saying, Lech, Lecha, Go to yourself. Into that precise place of stuckness, God calls with compassion and tells Avram gently to move forward. Avram, Lecha, move on. Pick up from this place of grief and go forward. It reminds me of a midrash that says that there's an angel for every blade of grass whispering, grow, grow. But perhaps that's the message of life itself. Maybe that message is embedded in our very existence. Go forth to yourself. Grow, grow. Emerge from this stuck place. But there's more than that. God tells Abraham not only that he will be blessed, but commands him to become a blessing himself. Hayeh bracha. Be a blessing, because in a field of grief, in a city of fear, where there's rage and hatred all around, in a place devoid of blessing, it is upon us to become a blessing. The divine voice of compassion invites us, or maybe gently commands us, to make our journeys to become Hebrews, Ivrim, whose root means to cross over. Because we feel and are so vulnerable at this moment. We don't know what's in store for us in our private lives, in our shared lives, as Americans, as Jews, as members of the human family, as inhabitants of this earth. So many of us are afraid and grieving. It is essential, of course, to take the time to sit Shiva, to give grief space. And then once it's time to rise up from Shiva, it is crucial that we hear that gentle voice. From this place of grief, go forward, Lecha, to yourself. Go forward to yourself as exactly the person you are, as exactly the people we are, with our individual and collective histories and destinies, because the world needs you, each one of us, to go forward and not be stuck. The world needs us as a people to go forward and not be stuck. I was sharing some of my grief this morning with my friend Robin, and she said, "How can I help you?" And I said, "Well, you can write my sermon for me today. Or you could take my place in jury duty next week." But actually, you can't. I have to do these things. The world is calling upon me, myself, to make my unique offering. Each one of us, right, are commanded by the details of our lives every single day to rise up to obligation. And maybe sometimes we feel it as a burden, and maybe the truth is they're really blessings, calling upon us to go to ourselves, to give the world the gift of who we are in all our uniqueness. At this moment of grief, so become a Hebrew, cross over, move on, stand up for our people, and at the same time, stand up for the widow, the orphan, the stranger, for those who might be even more vulnerable than we are at this moment, even though that's hard to imagine. I have no doubt in the coming years that we will have to fight to protect ourselves as Jews. And we will at the same time be called upon to protect others who are imperiled. Can we do both? I don't know the answer. But the Torah commands both. Lecha, go to yourself. Be a blessing. Hayeh bracha, spawn a people who are as many of the grains of sand and as luminous as the stars, to light up these dark times we live in. And remember, you were a stranger in a strange land, and thereby, you are commanded to protect the stranger, the widow, and the orphan. To go back again to the memory of Anne that I started with, her voice was powerful and yet understated. She had a knowing smile and a wry sense of humor. She had an understated way of pushing me forward as a friend and as a mentor. I bless all of us this week to take the time to sit Shiva if we need to sit with and feel our grief, and to hear, and then to hear that gentle voice. Is it the voice of a friend, of a mentor? Is it God's voice? Probably it's all of the above that tells us, urges us, gently commands us to keep moving forward, even with our grief, even with our fear, even with our rage. Like Abraham, become a blessing. Be a blessing. In a world where blessings and care, where our very humanity are dangerously at risk, in the very face of a loss like this, we must find a way to move forward. I can hear Anne whispering it. I could even hear God commanding it.